And that's Sarah coming in. Pause. All right. And we are situated. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I know the awkward faces that we make as we're trying to make transitions is always entertaining for all lives. You know, the whole, like sometimes we're zooming in and you can see our nostrils and everything. So, you know, we're family, so that's what's going to happen. So once again, hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Gibson. I am your academic for athletes, and I want to welcome you to transition from athlete to question mark. Working on that whole process of there is a form of transition that every athlete goes through, either from middle school to high school to college, college to life after sports. And just wanted to take a moment just to really open it up, answer some of your questions. Some of you guys have said some things on some Facebook groups, and I was able to pull some of them. And a lot of it is just the general basic knowledge that you really need to consider going into becoming an athlete. So I just want to kind of do a quick introduction to our panel, to you guys. And it's just really brief, but we're going to try to spend this whole hour really talking about the full details. So we have Mr. Taj Deshawn. So he is like entrepreneur, want to be him. I want to be the female version of this guy. All right. There's so many people on here I want to be. So I have so many things, but definitely the vice president of self-publishing helped me write our book. Shameless plug. Okay. Over there, you know, the athlete to entrepreneur. Yep. Zooming it in. My mom has like 3 copies. And I think she's selling them. I have to get my cut. But anyway, definitely the author and a former D1 football player at Stony Brook University. Main thing is that he helps athletes discover their new identity and life's direction after sports. He believes that what drives us within the athletic arena is also driving us today. So it takes guidance and just a little push in the right direction to kind of help lead you into that. So besides just helping out with the whole mental aspect of it, he also helps out with people to land those jobs and businesses as they progress into their lives as former athletes. So we have Taj Deshawn, and then we had Dr. Sarah Lupe. Okay, and we have that for the founder of Rebranded Athletics, which, you know, we have another plug with the t-shirt. So that's what we do. We support each other, you know. If like Corey's here, Corey, I got your t-shirt on too. So none of my stuff, but we're supporting each other, right? So definitely a former educator, but still an educator. So D1 athlete, again, for volleyball at Cal State Fullerton. So she's passionate about helping athletes, so college, professional, and former athletes to understand their potential and drive them towards their transition out of athletics and becoming change leaders in the world by taking their skill set and rebranding themselves as they enter to the next phase of life after sports. So that is Dr. Sarah. Then we have on the line Chris Williams. I've known Chris since high school. Been buddies. Again, another person I want to be a female version of. He is a positive energy coach, like best-selling author of 20 Beautiful Men, motivational speaker, serial entrepreneur. Like he's not just doing one thing. He's a mentor. Right now he's on the phone because he's traveling, right? He's doing the thing. He's also an ESPN analyst and also a Hall of Famer. D1 basketball athlete over at Manhattan College. So along with teaching and especially about positivity, like he also did some organizations like the Disney Dreamers Academy with Steve Harvey, the Miami Heat, New York Academy, Department of Education. Working with young people is his passion. So if you're looking for someone to not only work with young people, but also working with other corporations, working with organizations, he is your guy. And then later on, we're going to have Miss Sarah Williams. So she's an athletic identity coach, and she's from Born to Endure. Also a former athlete herself, and specialized in helping athletes discover their identity, perform at their peak, finding a new career path, passion, once retired from sports, and basically cultivating a new life plan. So we understand, like, this is the resource. And I know at the end, I definitely have everyone's contact information so we can do some exchange. I'll also put it into the description as a PDF. So you'll have everyone's information to whoever you want to reach out to at the end of the event. So I'm your girl, Audrey Gibson, and I went to St. Joe's University, shameless plug, of the Athletic 10. And I'm just basically, I'm a math tutor, but I'm also a former athlete, and I'm making that change to really help out with student athletes. I recently, about 3 years in the span, I lost 3 student athletes to suicide. And after that, I said, no more. I have to get everybody educated. I really need for people to understand that this whole thing called life after sports, it is a real thing. Athletic burnout is a real thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to open it up for everybody. So we are all into the whole transition. And I would love to kind of hear from each of you. So, just Taj, we're going to start with you, if you don't mind. What was your transition like personally? And then we're going to talk about how we do business-wise. So what was your transition like?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I definitely don't want to hog the whole hour, but it was extremely challenging. And I say that for many reasons. Number one, because I thought I was the only one going through it at the time. There weren't great spaces or great people like us, at least that I knew of, doing what we do to help athletes transition. So I felt like I was the only one, and I didn't really know how to articulate what I was going through. So to make a long story short, came back from going to school at Stony Brook, New York, moved back in with my parents in California, and very grateful that they let me move back in. And I found myself just waking up day after day, unemployed. I always say I was looking at my little Pop Warner trophies, and like, I can't believe after 4 years on scholarship, I'm just really back to square one, really honestly in a worse place than I started. Yes, I had an education, but really nothing going on. So that led to a lot of, isolation, like I said, because I wasn't talking to anybody about what I was going through. Isolation, lots of drinking. Definitely, I wasn't diagnosed or anything, but looking back on it, definitely a lot of, there was some depression going on, and just a really dark time in my life. That's the best way I could sum it up.
Yeah, you definitely hit on a lot of those nerves that a lot of these athletes. Sarah, we'll do with Sarah Lupe. I have to do this. So Sarah, talk a little bit about how are you going to help? How do you help a lot of these athletes as they transition?
Well, one of the things that I discovered through my transition is it's very similar to the grief process, and it's something that you have to go through. And so it wasn't, of course, until I went through my whole process that I figured out that this was something that was needed. But really, the transition is phases. You start off with the feeling of, it's ending. I'm losing my identity. I'm losing that part of me and letting go, to being at a point where you feel stuck or lost about what's next, into the next phase of dreaming about your beginning. And so what I do with athletes, for Rebranded Athlete, is I work on that transition with athletes to figure out what else they're good at besides their sport. Because for so long, I identified as Sarah, the volleyball player. Like, that's who I was. And so without that, who was I? And I had a plan as far as what was next for me. I was going to be jumping into education and become a teacher, but I had some roadblocks and hiccups along the way, which really made me question, is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life next? And so what I help the athletes that I work with is to not only help them through that difficult time of transition, but really figure out what else they're good at and what can amount to the same feelings that they had as an athlete into this next phase, this next season of their life, and take that life the skill set that they had as an athlete and apply it to life after sports. And I think that's so critical, because there's something that we learn on the court, the field, the pool, that you can't put into a curriculum. You can't write it in a book. Like, you actually have to experience it and have that skill set, and then be able to know how you can use it in this next phase of your life.
Yes, definitely. And my own thing is, there's like a spin on it. And sometimes, like, we want to bring out the positivity of it. Like, we want to bring out that we don't want to say that being an athlete is horrible, because we all know that there is some joy. There are some pitfalls, but there are also some growth. So, like, Chris, I want to kind of come to you, because I want to reach out to make sure everybody is able to speak on this. So, like, you decided, like, your experience was a little bit different from everyone else's. So it's kind of like, and it brought into that whole positivity of what you're basically doing with your business. So can you elaborate on, like, a little bit with your experience, and then how it led into what you're doing now?
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for having me with these distinguished guests here, both of them on the money. For me, maybe a tad different, but very similar. However, going into my senior year, I had an idea that I did not plan on playing basketball any further at the next level. Probably had some opportunities, but mentally I had kind of tapped out, and I just did not want to do that any longer. So as a point guard, one of the things I was fairly decent at was being a leader. And that kind of led me to my speaking engagement, wanting to be a speaker and wanting to be into television, being on ESPN. So as a communications major, that's one of the things I thought about before leaving the game. So the positive spin for me, I would always tell myself, the roar of the crowd is not for me. They're cheering for what I can do. But when I can't do it any longer, they're going to cheer for someone else. And I think oftentimes athletes have such a difficult time figuring that out, because the sport will continue with or without you. And at some point, everybody has to stop, and it'll keep going. And once you realize that, I think that helps out a lot. But the one thing I struggled with, or at least had a challenge with the most, was the competitiveness and having the practice. And my body was just used to doing that all the time, and not doing it all the time was kind of a shock.
And it's like just trying to make that adjustment. You know, I think all of us had that point, like Taj mentioned, like just making that adjustment. Like, how can we move on to it? So then with Sarah Williams, I would love for you to kind of talk about, how do you help those young men? Like, okay, we're not young chickens anymore, but we still can do what we gotta do. But how does your service kind of help them, guide them through, so you can cultivate that plan that you were talking about in your bio?
Hi, guys. It's good to meet you all. I'm happy to be here. So this is such a great topic, and it's one that we all deal with. And so many times I have clients come to me and say, gosh, I wish I would have had you when I was going through this 20 years ago, right? So what I do is I help in my program athletes discover who they are. So as you know, when we're competing in high level sports, whatever that might be, and you might be going to college, you might be in college ball, you might be, I do coach professionals as well. And we all know that being an athlete, there's an expiration date, like Taj was saying, and Sarah was saying, is that when you are all immersed in becoming the best you can be as far as an athlete goes, some of that stuff gets lost as far as who you are as a person. You also end up bending your values, believe it or not, to align with how you can get to the top of your playing field, whatever sport it might be. You bend your own values to try to be better. And so they may not be bent like so far off, but what I do is I help people get back to who they are by learning what their values really are. What are they aligning with in this moment? So I love what Sarah said as far as the grief process goes, because it's a grieving process because we are losing who we once were, right? We are always an athlete. So we don't lose the identity of an athlete. We just have to take on a different identity to be able to compete in other areas of life, into a career. We don't know what that looks like outside of being an athlete. So I like to tap into people's value systems and find out what their why is, what pushes them through. And because I was an athlete myself, I can communicate in a language that's friendly with athletes that understand. So I can talk in terms of, okay, let's push yourself a little bit more. You know, you can take it. I also get into the emotional intelligence piece, which is incredible, because what happens is, if they're like me and someone like me, as I stepped into sports to escape things from home. So I used sports as an escape. So what happens is I didn't learn how to deal with my emotions properly. I was using the rage, if you will, out on the court, out on the field. And so I didn't learn how to deal with my emotions. I didn't understand that life could be different than what my parents taught me. So I go through a lot of that kind of stuff and discovering who you really are at the core. So my slogan is, I'm an athletic identity coach, and I help you become who you were meant to be, not what the world has transformed you to become.
That is wonderful, because that's where we constantly get lost. We constantly get lost in a lot of people that I've been talking to on Facebook, and a few of the parents literally say at the rightful age of 2, I put my kid in a sport. You know, it's either because I didn't want them to tear my house up. I loved how they defined their children as wild. My kid was wild, all kinds of crazy. And when you've done it, and like a lot of you guys, you basically work with the transition of adults, basically like people that will go into college or life after sports, or maybe even professional levels. But how can we take this, and this is going to be open so anyone can chime in. How can we take this to kind of formulate for those younger kids, like those that have been playing since they were 2, and now they're burnt out as a middle schooler, and when it comes to high school, they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. And we'll talk about the parent aspect in a second, but how about the child right now? Like, how can we, and I'm going to make it open for everyone.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just saying, I'll go next. Ladies first, please.
Well, I love this question, because that's kind of where I'm shifting some of my business to, is going to help people who are younger. Because what happens is, by the time they're in high school or in college, it's almost we got to work backwards. So adjusting them to their emotions, having them learn how to process emotions, what emotions are. Like right now, I have a 6-year-old who's having problems sleeping, right? And so it's very clear to me that he doesn't understand what's happening. Like, all of us go, oh, insomnia, we have our mind going on and on and on. But it's the same for a kid. You know, they're sitting there going, I don't know what's happening to me. I feel like I'm being bad because I can't sleep, and I'm supposed to be in my own bed and all this stuff. And so we have to teach them younger also about sports, so they could be sitting there thinking about themselves that they're bad in sports, or, you know, their coach doesn't like them, the teacher doesn't like them, all these things. And so helping them younger learn who they are, and that they can experience all these emotions and be good, if you will, at sports or life or whatnot, and they're not being punished for having these emotions. I think it starts way, way back then, in my opinion.
Chris, you wanted to chime in?
Well, it definitely starts early. As a youngster, I was one of those kids who lived on if my team won, very upset if we lost, blaming a number of people. And I think it's important for your support system, and in my case, my father, someone to sit you down and let you understand that, listen, everything doesn't revolve around a particular sport. Like I would cry after my favorite team would lose. If the Sixers lose to the Celtics, I would cry. I really just despised Larry Bird when I was so young, and all these things festered because everything was put into particular sports for me. But at some point, I had to sit down with him and understand that, listen, that's a game, and it doesn't have to affect you that way. Yeah, you can be a part of it, you can enjoy it and have fun, but once it's over, that's it. You have to let it go. You have to let it go. And if you don't let it go, I won't allow you to play. So that's what it really came down for me. But I was so emotionally attached to sports. And just to go a step further, aside from sports, my emotions were just basic. But if it came to a sport that I was playing or watching, that I was involved in, I was so emotionally and just had all my emotions tapped into 100.
But when you say let it go, what does that mean? What does that mean to a child?
Well, as a younger person, again, I'm guessing around 10 or 11 in that area. I had to come to the point to understand that, I can't control everything that's going on. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. And meaning I can't just emotionally put everything into it where I'm crying and upset all the time. And I had to let that emotion, or at least that portion of it, go from a standpoint of it's not all about me. I can't do anything with that. So I have to step back on certain things because it would really bother me a lot.
I just want to jump in real quick. Is that okay, Audrey, if I share on this? So I know everyone on this panel can speak to this, especially when it comes to children. And I definitely stay in my lane. So I'm working with athletes who are primarily coming out of college and some professional athletes. But because there are a lot of, I know parents are tuning into this, just from personal experience, like Chris said, I was the kid who was crying after games, in Pop Warner and Little League as well. When I got to high school, if I had a bad game, I was upset with myself and beating myself up because I thought that would ruin my chances of getting a scholarship. When I got a scholarship and got to college, if I had a bad game, I was thinking this is ruining my chances of getting to the NFL. And so I think one of the most important things for any parents listening is that, I'll never forget, I think I was 10. It was like my first year playing football. And I was crying because I had a bad game. And my dad, he was just like, and I'm grateful to have had a great father in my life. And he said to me, Taj, no matter how, you perform out there, I'm still going to love you regardless, and I think just hearing those words, now granted, like I said, I was still beating myself up in high school and college, but the fact that he said that always stuck with me. And I think because of the work that all of us on this panel do when it comes to helping athletes transition and figuring out the next chapter of their lives, I think just for the parents tuning in, I think on top of just reminding them of that, also reminding them, not in a bad way, like, hey, this is going to end someday, but just having your child focus on the fact that they can take lessons away from their sport, even if it is 2 years old, no matter how old you are when you start, like just have them focusing on what you're taking away from it and what you're going to be able to do for the rest of your life with this sport, and using those lessons in everyday life versus, oh, it only applies in this one arena. So those are just my thoughts on that.
So I'd also like to chime in too. My background, I was a school teacher and a principal before becoming an athlete transition coach that I am now, but working with students, even when I was a teacher, and really exposing kids to other opportunities as well, because I think sometimes we get so focused on the one thing or the one sport that we really lose out on other opportunities that kids could be exposed to. So, whether it's exploring something that maybe they're interested in science, or maybe it's something that, they like as far as even reading and developmenting that way, because you really don't know if you like something until you actually try it. And so when we're only exposed to a few things, that's all we have as options. And even for me, as I ventured into college, and it's like, okay, you need to pick a major now and what you want to be for the rest of your life. It was either go into sports, which I was I wanted to be a physical therapist or an athletic trainer at first, but I blew out my knee my freshman year in college and spent way too much time in the training room and figured out that wasn't for me because I was exposed to it. And then I went back to what was comfortable for me, which was education, because I grew up with a family of educators. My dad was a school principal and my aunt was also one as well. So I spent a lot of time in that. And so as you can see, that's where it kind of led me down the course of my life, because it was things that I was accustomed and used to. And now that I've been accustomed to even starting my own business, I say, man, if I could go back and tell younger Sarah, like, you know, you should have signed up for all these different things or tried this or tried that, because you just never know what you're going to be into until you try it. And just like all of us who are up here, we tried our sports at least once and we fell in love with it. And that's what we decided to go with. So if I could give parents any advice out there, it's really, you know, recognize that you can provide different opportunities for your kids and be okay with that, because it could lead to something that they're truly passionate about and something else that could become a career or something after their sport is done. Because I talk about this too with my clients as well. It is a small percentage of our life that we play this sport, and we think that that's as good as life gets, when in fact there's a whole life waiting for us and a whole lifetime of other seasons of things of greatness that we're going to amount to. But it doesn't start unless you start to get exposed to other things and discover other ways of living too.
I was like, definitely well said, guys, because it's funny to, as you guys were doing this, I saw like a post, and that's why I was checking my phone. It's not because, oh yeah, this is so boring. No. So if that seemed rude, I'm so sorry. But it was a post that a parent put into one of the Facebook groups for, I think it was for ice hockey. And this father wrote, "A farewell to a great game. Dad, I met with my coaches and I think this is it. I think I'm done. After 14 years of playing Division I, getting regional titles, state titles, 22 international appearances, D1 recruiting, thousands of miles of traveling, thousands of games, winning goals. It ends with a phone call. And I thought I would be ready when I got the call, but it sensed it was coming. I mean, she has 2 surgeries in the past 2 years, barely came back from them. And the one thing that he mentioned was, what do I say to other people? So it's almost like it's not only the athlete that's going through this transition, it's also the parents, because, you know, they're the ones that are out there and putting like traveling. And sometimes you have some parents that are like that, sometimes you don't. But when you get those parents that are really vested, like they are on the court with you, or they're on the field with you. And then when all of a sudden that transition of life after sports hits, regardless if it hits in middle school, high school, or after college, they're lost as well. Like I knew, like when I graduated from college and I went overseas and my parents didn't, you know, finances, we can't just go ahead and fly to France. We don't have that. But they felt lost too. They stayed and went to St. Joe's games after my first year of graduating. And they're just like, this is different because, you know, we don't have our baby out there to root for her, but we'll root for her friend, but her friend's graduating, and they felt lost. And then all of a sudden when they go talk to their friends, they're like, what is she doing now? What is, you know, it's always that question. And like, I know we all had to go through that question, and it was just like, the shiver down your back, like, please don't ask me, please don't ask me, please don't ask me. But they always do. But it's almost like as we're sitting here talking to parents, like, even though we're helping with the athlete, you know, is there any kind of suggestions that we can give for parents with their transition of life after sports? I know I'm getting deep with this. Like, it wasn't supposed to be this deep, but here we are. So anyone want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll jump in if that's okay. And mind you, I don't have kids, but I think about this stuff a lot. I'm probably about a year or 2 removed from having my first kid, so stay tuned. But I would say, I think number one, and I'll speak specifically to the college level, just because that's the majority of athletes I'm working with, and that was my experience. So I think as a parent, Well, first of all, the fact that we're having this space right now is helpful so parents can understand what their child is going through. That way it's not the parent, you know, as a parent, you won't be so focused on yourself. You can realize your child is experiencing something as well. But I look to my parents, and I think one thing they did a great job of was not pressuring me. Like that question you brought up, Audrey, of, you know, please don't ask me, like, you know, you go to family dinners and the holidays and stuff, people are asking you, so what are you going to do now? And you're just scrambling to try to say something, you know, oh, I had this job interview, or I'm thinking about getting into sales or whatever, like, you know, whatever we say during that time. And as a parent, I think it's helpful if you can just allow time for them to kind of develop and, you know, not necessarily meddle, but just let them know that you're there. You know, if you know, if your kid needs anything and they may be experiencing something. And then, like I said, I think some people, it's helpful if you don't try to rush them into it. You know, I know some parents are like, hey, you went to college, you're 20 something now, you got to go out there and figure it out. I don't think that attitude is helpful. Not that you have to let them stay at home until they're 30 and 40 years old, but at the same time, I think there needs to be a grace period where you understand they're trying to find themselves again. And I think just having that friendly reminder from a parent to a child that I am here for you in the event that you need anything, even if you just need to get things off your chest or anything I can support with, knowing that, you know, someone has your back goes a long way.
Oops. Excellent, guys. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. I have like Major League Baseball players, and this is hard because, you know, you've got kids that have gone, you know, they've started playing at, you know, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they've gone all the way up, and the parents are very invested, basically. And you've got major league players, and they're sending money home to the parents, right? And so it's really difficult because if that contract doesn't renew, it's the player is not only letting down or feeling like they're let down, but they feel like a huge weight that they now cannot provide for their families. And so I have some that have been in some better situations than others, but we have a lot of players that we pick up from like Dominican Republic, Cuba, et cetera, where they're coming from incredibly, you know, horrible poverty areas where they have nothing. Like I've gone on baseball tours in Cuba, and they're playing with, you know, sticks like we would as when we're kids, but they're adult, you know, high school kids. This is what they're playing with. And ran a marathon there, and they have at the end of the race where you donate your shoes that you just ran your marathon in, because they don't have any. They were running in like pairs of Keds that are not even, I mean, you know, off-brand shoes. So they just don't have the structure. So it's very important for them to send money back. And so in that case, you know, it's very hard because the parents become dependent upon the child for income to survive. And, you know, there's a hard level is because they're not necessarily expecting their child to do that. It's just part of their culture. So, you know, as far as how do you know, they love their children immensely, just like most of us parents do. But it's just really hard to get on a line with how, you know, what's the fine line between having a parent, you know, being right there on the sidelines with them or in the game versus, you know, being supported by them. And so that's a question that I get a lot. And I also have parents who are, you know, who are too dependent upon their child's outcome. Like they want them to play more than the player actually wants to play himself. And they don't know how to approach their parents. Like, I'm just going to be done. And I had one recently decide that their career is over. But the mom is on the other end talking to me going, how do we keep him in the game? And so that was a really hard thing, because I say, you know, I'm like, Mom, you know, he's 28 years old now. Like, he can live his life. And if he's not playing at the top level, he definitely has a choice, and this is his choice. So, you know, as far as parents, like, I love what Taj says, it's like, you know, make the space available to listen to your children. And if it's people who are who are hoping to, make a monetary amount and help them in a family situation. Like, how do we make that pressure not so strong on the children? Because once they don't get that contract renewed or get an injury, or mental health injury, I don't know if you guys know this, but baseball doesn't pay for mental health injuries if you're on the bench. So, any other injury, you're still making a paycheck. So we have to make it okay that they can fail, right? Failure, we have to talk about failure with our children, that in a way that it creates other opportunities, and make it not look like it's a, end all end, if that makes sense.
So my parents were very, very involved in my sporting career. Even my senior year in college, I remember they went to every single game across country. They made it a point to be there, for every single game, because they knew that was going to be the end for me. But my parents were always very involved. Whether it was high school, they were always helping out with the snack bar, different things like the parent group. I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but the parent group was almost as tight as the team. They really had their own team going on the side, and, they would call each other, text each other, hang out after the games, all that kind of stuff. So even in college, my parents were very involved with the booster club there and really created this community. And I think that was like the lasting legacy that my parents left, or for the highlight of my career, because they really built up the booster club within Cal State Fullerton when I was there. And so passing that on, I think, was in a sense having some closure for them. But as I went through my transition, I realize now they went through a transition too, because I played volleyball for 14 years, and that was a big time commitment for them with everything that they did, within their life. And I look back now, and I do remember my dad would go and volunteer even at my high school, the games after my career was over, because he still wanted to kind of be involved in it. It did trickle off over the years, but I think that kind of helped in their transition as well, not to just completely stop everything, but to also see ways to give back, especially to the different organizations and things that I was a part of. So advice for parents, I think that could be a way of, helping to have some closure, even if you're not ready for it, because there's, no better way than to give back to organizations that were such a big part for your kids and your child growing up. But, I think part of it too is recognizing that it's not only a hard transition for the student athlete itself, but also the parents, and finding a way to kind of blend that together, because as much support as the athlete needs during that time, I think we also need to put some supports in place for the parents. And I think having a platform like this and a community space that people can come together is a great way of doing this. And I wish it would have existed, when my parents were going through that transition during the time. So Audrey, I think you're doing wonderful things here for this community.
Mm-hmm.
I greatly appreciate that, guys. I mean, it takes a village. It takes a village, and this is the small part. This is just one section of the village. We actually have Miss LaShawn G, sorry, I keep putting the H's involved and stuff, that I actually met this week, and I think is a friend of Taj, if I'm not mistaken. And we actually had a nice little conversation, and I really felt like I found another sister. And not because she's a sister, but it's because we just really connected, and everything that she wants to do, especially for the high school and the college kids, and just really get them informed, because we all know, as much as our intentions are good, sometimes teenagers are hard-headed. Okay, let's be real, because they're just I'm invincible. I can do anything. I'm not going to be like you. It's great to know this information. A lot of you guys have done a lot of PDs, or you've done some speaking engagements, and some people are really listening, but then you always have those few that's just not listening, and they're the ones that really need to hear this message. And it's almost how can I really put it out there without, I don't know, physically holding the kid down, you need to listen to this. And you got to do this, because this is going to happen, because we want to protect. so much because we know what we've gone through. And we know that the kids nowadays, they want to do what we already been through. We played Division I. I think everyone here has played like Division I, if not Division II. We've all been very successful. You know, we have Hall of Famers on this route. We have like people that have traveled overseas. We have people that have invested not only just as an athlete, but also coaches and also principals and teachers. But sometimes it's so hard to get through the kids. And I know there's a lot of parents, especially a lot of parents that I have on my work schedule who I tutor, and their parents will call me and say, what should I do with my child? And I think that's what's sparking me to really have this platform and to really have you guys as a great support system, because I'm still trying to figure these things out, like how to keep it moving. But for parents, when they see their kid as the golden ticket, as Sarah Williams mentioned, in a way, a lot of those parents don't want, they're just like, I did all this work and I don't want to let it go. But there's times you just got to let go, you know,
Right.
Especially when you're at 28. I'm sorry, but boo-boo, I need for you. You know, it's time to cut it off. Cut. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the love is gone. Like the love is still there, but parents have that problem with that transition. I mean, my father passed away about 5 years ago, soon to be 6. But my mom, you know, she's still alive and kicking. And she will still, I'm 49, and she will still call me her baby. Oh, I'm going to go see my baby. And people are like, oh, okay, they're expecting a baby. And all of a sudden you got the 6'1" big broad girl that's like bench pressing like around 215 come walking in, and they're like, where's the baby? And I'm like, you're always someone's baby. Like we all get it. We're always going to be someone's baby no matter what. But sometimes, just like Taj mentioned, just like Sarah, both Sarahs and Chris mentioned, that it's that support. You know, don't be afraid to tell your kids, like, look, I love you and I'm here to support you, whatever your decision is. Even though the kid would say, don't come to my game. Like, come on, we've all been to that. Like, no, don't come to my game. You don't have to come to this game. Don't listen to the kid, because they will ride you years down the road saying, you didn't come to my game. And you're like, you told me not to. So don't listen to the kid. Show up to the game. If you're loud, be loud. Because one day when they're playing in a college game, they're going to be expecting to hear your voice. And when they don't hear it, it's going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, just continue to be that support. And like, yes, you're going to have transitions. And yes, I'm seeing other people. There's a lady, Ms. Jamesetta Cleveland, who I've been talking to, and she's building up. She's the Sports Mom University. And she started her business with helping and supporting parents with their recruiting and the NIL process. And she's there for the parents. Like, yeah, she's there for the athlete, but she's really there for the parents, because she didn't have that support when she was trying to get her kid recruited. My parents, they didn't know. They're originally from Jamaica. You know, all they have is running and soccer. And that's not me, because I'm lazy. I'm just built for power. And my whole thing is, they didn't understand the process. We didn't have someone to walk us through. Now there's tons of agencies, there's tons of one-to-ones and small businesses that's developing these student athletes. But sometimes I feel like there's so much to help the kids to get to college, but there's no discussion about once they get out. And that's where all these people that are here to talk about.
Right.
And I really think, and that's why I appreciate it. Like, I feel like we can go around and around because we all know that the transition is different for every kid, but at least you have that support system. And at least you know, here's a name, here's a person. So I know at the end of this video, and look in the descriptions past the timestamps, I'm going to have a link of everyone's contact information. So if you saw something and you felt like something resonated, you know, with Taj or with Sarah and Sarah Williams or Chris Williams, please, or even with me, reach out, because when you do this in silence, and you try to do it by yourself, you're going to be another statistic. And that's what I don't want. I don't want another statistic. I don't want to go to another funeral. I don't want to go and do another GoFundMe. And I think everyone feels the same way about this. So to really kind of sum up, like we talked about parents, we've talked about how we're going to help with child's, but let's talk a little bit about our business and our businesses and how are we supporting in our special way. So I want to like Taj, because Taj, you're doing multiple things. You're just like Chris with like the serial entrepreneur. We're touching base on so many things. So talk to me about your business.
Yeah, like you said, it's I wear many hats, and it's all sort of things that have happened organically. When I first started out, I started this work in 2017, going into 2018 is when I was like, I realized there was an issue. And so I just started doing one-on-one coaching. I put together some curriculum that evolved into one-on-one and group coaching. And then I was putting out a lot of content. So I started a podcast, and I figured that would be a great way just to get more information out there. It's not just me rambling. I'm interviewing athletes that I've worked with. I have great people like yourself on, Sarah Lepe and Audrey, you've been on there, and Sarah Williams. I will be reaching out. I'll be reaching out to Chris and LaShawn. I actually have a call scheduled with LaShawn next week. So, but that's really the goal of what I'm doing aside from the coaching, is having resources and information and getting more stories out there of people like us who have not only made it through the other side of the transition and can share our stories and how we got through it, but we're all here today because we're helping other athletes get through it. So I'm wanting to highlight more stories like that. Obviously that takes place not only on the podcast, but in the form of books as well. We got the Athlete's Entrepreneur book. Both Dr. Sarah and Audrey are in it. Sarah Williams, I believe you're participating in Forever Athlete with Corey Camp. So just getting more athlete stories out there and having all of us come together is really kind of what my new mission has been. And since I published my first book, I don't know if you can see it in the background, but this is my first book, Thrive After Sports. This has brought me a lot of opportunities to go in and speak. And so in addition to the podcast and the coaching, I'm really looking to get into more schools and get in front of athletes and do workshops and speaking gigs and things like that. So that's my mission. Just like everybody else here, I'm just trying to innovate and find different ways to help athletes avoid some of the challenges that we all face.
Nice.
Perfect. Sarah Williams, tell us a little bit about your business.
Okay. Well, I am also a emotional intelligence and athletic identity coach. So I'm adding, I don't know if you guys saw this, but this is super interesting. As article came out, was it today or yesterday, after the Super Bowl? And one of the key areas that the coach was using to help the athletes excel was gaining skills in the emotional intelligence area. So they coached more instead of a physical skill set, although that comes along. They focused more on a mental skill set, and that proven to help them win the Super Bowl. So I have been doing this and also branching out to more public areas, helping companies as well and businesses, trying to help their leadership structure operate from more of emotional intelligence, because I know if I can get to these adults, they all have children at home, they take it home and they practice what they learn at home with their children. What happens is we're in an environment where we live what we learn what we live, right? So that if we're not taught these skills, which most of us aren't because our parents didn't know, then we don't know how to react. We don't know what to do with this anger and disappointment, or, I also teach on perfectionism, because this is a huge trait that I think a lot of athletes have experiences. We want to be perfect. And that's where, we have expectations that we put upon ourselves that nobody could meet. So we're constantly disappointed when we don't perform at whatever our expectations of perfection is for us that day. So we're constantly in a mode of disappointment for ourselves. We're our own worst enemies. So basically, I work with athletes to know that, to teach them how to love themselves well, starting with learning who they are and adding that emotional piece, because then they're able to spread love and be a mentor for others. So that's kind of how I'm kind of a top-down approach as far as that goes, and with helping people overcome when they come out of an athletic career or they have an injury. We deal with all those emotions, like Sarah was saying. It is really a grieving process that you go through. So I do it in a different way, not a traditional grief plan, but I do it through emotional intelligence.
Thank you. And then Sarah, Dr. Sarah.
So I am very similar to Taj, athlete transition coach, and I am the founder of Rebranded Athlete. So it looks like Taj is my walking billboard for you guys today. Thanks, Taj. Appreciate the support. But I work with college and professional athletes as they transition away and trying to find their place in the world. And with my experience and background, I could talk about it all night, but the very, very short Cliff Note version is that when I finally got into my career as a teacher, I knew I wasn't going to be there long because I saw that I was different already because of the skill set that I came with as an athlete. And so within 5 years, I moved up into a site leadership position as an assistant principal. And within 3 years from there, I ended up being a school principal. And I really attribute all that success to what I learned on the court. There's no way that I would have been that type of leader. Those skills were in me very early because of my sport. And so the concept of a rebranded athlete, we hear about former athlete, retired athlete, but I really don't like those labels because it kind of sounds like it's in the past. And so what a rebranded athlete is taking those life skills, that skill set as an athlete, and learning how to repurpose it and rebrand it into this next phase of your life, because you're always going to be an athlete. There's no way that label is ever going to be taken away from you, but it's learning how to move forward with it in this next season of your life and apply it in a new way. And I really believe that athletes have the ability to change the world just because of our given skill set, if we're given the right place and time and the right purpose in life after sports to do so. So, if any of you resonated with anything, tonight, I'm so honored to be up here on this panel with everybody, sharing all of our expertise and everything that we have gone through in our lifetime. So if there's anything that I can help support you with, please feel free to reach out. And I'm also an author as well, too. In the author club, I have my own book here, Pivoting from the Game. And I know Athlete to Entrepreneur, you can see it on Audrey's screen and Taj's screen as well, the co-authoring book that we wrote together. And in addition to that, I help out with self-publish in 30 days as well, too, because writing my story was so impactful that I want to be able to help other people share that with the world, too. So thank you. And Audrey, thank you again for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you for taking this time. And then Chris, let's talk about you. Tell us about your business.
Well, again, Audrey, it's been a pleasure. I've learned so much from everyone in this small amount of time. Again, Chris Williams, motivational speaker, positive energy coach. I challenge people to change the way they think using positive energy and self-evaluation. And basically, like everyone has summed up, really comes down to having a good support system. And that support system starts with you. And so many people feed bad information to themselves. They have a bad movie going over and over in their mind. And one of the things I try to assist with is getting that good vibe, that good energy consistently with you. And then you can get with people who have that same energy. So regardless of what you're hearing on the outside, you still have a good vibe inside, and you can evaluate yourself correctly. Oftentimes we put ourselves down, especially in sports. We're so difficult and harsh on ourselves, as I stated earlier, as a young person. And you need people who will let you know it's okay. You'll be fine. You lost, but you still can win. And I believe that's so important, especially during this time period with social media, everything else going on, and you consistently see a lot of negative vibes and we don't see the good things. So as I state when I speak, part of my job is put the good energy out there, because we don't say all the good things that are going on, but we'll be quick to put something bad that's out there. So again, consistently learning, putting that good support system around you. And I have a speaker-driven business. As an entrepreneur, I work with ESPN. I broadcast men's and women's basketball games. Obviously, the podcast deal is big also. So very fortunate and blessed that I have the ability to reach out to other athletes. As a broadcaster, I'm around athletes all the time, so you get a really good feel and vibe of how they feel. We talked about parents, which I thought was a great, great point. And oftentimes athletes don't have the ability or don't know what to say to their parents. And they may be done with the game or don't feel as comfortable, but our group or people like us can give them the skill set or at least help them when saying, you know, this may be it for me, and start to look at something else. And I totally agree with Sarah when she said, your skill set from athletics carries over to so many different things, and you have a head start. As an athlete, we have such a head start because of our dedication, our discipline, all the things you learned in your particular sport definitely do carry over. So again, fortunate, blessed to be on here with everyone else. If anybody needed me, I'm willing to help. Like I said, student first, teacher second, serving always, and I think we're all in that serving business.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, everyone. So this is the conclusion of transition to athletic to ? And based on all these people that are here, I can go no wrong. I can go no wrong with life. Like, life should be just wonderful. And it is, because I have these lovely people as a support system. So this was for the month of February. So for next month, I'm actually having another one. I think it's March the 17th. I want to be clarified on, you know, just before St. Patty's Day. Why not? Why not? We're not doing anything. It's basically going to be how the raising of a female athlete. So that's going to be for the month of March, is usually Women's Month. And just want to reach out to the fathers as well as the mothers about, like, what's it like to raise a female athlete? And a lot of people, they think everything's the same. And just the difference of why we're so prone to getting our ACLs torn, or why we're so prone to have, you know, weak ankles, and why are things being treated different for female athletes than for male athletes. I didn't notice it until I had a daughter. So I'm starting to see a lot of that. So that's going to be the next one in March. So just be ready for that. And then possibly in June, go back to the whole becoming an athlete. So we can start with that transformation again, working from looking at mental health, looking at the NIL, looking at branding, looking at wellness and nutrition, as well as recruiting. Because a lot of people, they still a little bit lost with the recruiting process, but at the same time, knowing what you're getting yourself into. So again, I'm Audrey Gibson, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, or even just to look at the replay if you're looking at that. And if anything, make sure you look into the description to get all our contact information. You can also sign and subscribe for my YouTube channel, because I'm going to be starting a new series called Becoming Auto. Yes, that's my nickname. So I'm going to go through the whole process of how it was like me growing up. So you can get a good idea. So thank you again, and have a lovely evening, and see you soon.